Another controversy that may alter the course of the NFL and the Washington Commanders. Last week, the reporting was that the U.S. House Oversight and Reform Committee was looking into financial improprieties in addition to the chronic workplace issues that had spawned the investigation in the first place. Among the reports, an idea that a former employee, Jason Friedman, had spoken to the committee, 24-year employee in the ticketing area, given information, reportedly, allegedly, about 2 sets of books, about the team finding a way to take money that otherwise would go to the pool that is shared by all teams as the visiting ticket revenue and keeping it for the Washington Commanders. Well, the Commanders denied it pretty heavily last week. The committee supplied something much stronger today with a 20-page letter sent to the Federal Trade Commission and copies sent to the attorneys general of the surrounding jurisdictions, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, laying out the evidence that was provided by Jason Friedman to the committee. And there are 2 things here. We're going to try to boil this down because the article can get pretty confusing. There's a lot there. We tried to make it as simple as we could, distilling it from the very fine reporting of the Washington Post. There were 2 scams that were alleged by Jason Friedman. One, they were messing around with security deposits that multiple year season ticket holders had made and had basically forgotten about. They were not doing anything to help remind them of them and or creating enough obstacles that people would just say, screw it. And look, that happens from time to time. It's always easier to get them to take your money than it is to get them to give you their money back. There is a major publication, a major national publication that I almost subscribed to the other night until I saw that it wasn't nearly going to be as easy to stop the subscription as it was to start it. And that's usually the clue that there's a little scam floating around in this, that they're trying to throw obstacles in your way. So the Washington Commanders allegedly were doing that and keeping money that was paid as security deposits by multiple year season ticket holders. On top of that, they were doing something that they referred to as gathering juice. What they would do, and Friedman apparently has the receipts. He apparently has emails and documents to back this up. Not good for Daniel Snyder. You find a way to finagle the numbers so that revenue that comes in for tickets sold to Washington Commanders home games, and I know at the time they weren't the Commanders, but they are now. They don't get to sanitize their new name by saying, well, we weren't the Commanders then, don't call us the Commanders. You were the Commanders. You are the Commanders. Commanders get sullied by this mess. They would take that money and they would push it toward non-NFL events like a Kenny Chesney concert, an Army Notre Dame or a Navy Notre Dame game that was played at FedEx Field. Or, hey, maybe even a game I went to, a match I went to when I drove all the way over there to see Lionel Messi not play for Argentina at FedEx Field when I realized what a complete and total S-hole that stadium is. It's horrendous. So anyway, those are the 2 scams that were being run allegedly. And now Congress wants the FTC to investigate. The attorneys general are on notice. Just days after we saw that letter from 6 different attorneys general telling the NFL, we are watching you, NFL. We are watching you, just like Gaylord Fokker and Robert De Niro in Meet the Parents. So this is not good, Charean. And it keeps getting worse. You know, every new development, it keeps getting worse for the Washington Commanders and Daniel Snyder. And you just have to wonder when it's going to implode, because it feels like it's moving in that direction.
Yeah, it really does, Mike. And it becomes more damning and more damning with every day, frankly, with every week that we're hearing these things come out. I have 2 questions. Why wouldn't Daniel Snyder and the Washington Commanders make Jason Friedman sign an NDA and pay him whatever it took, $1 million, whatever, it's walk away. Don't ever talk about this, because he obviously has the papers. He obviously has the proof, or it seems like that, Mike, that he has the proof. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, could we see a class action suit? I don't know what the statute of limitations are, but could we see a class action suit from these people who didn't get their money back?
Well, we could, and it would be an argument similar to the one that Ray Horton's going to make in the aftermath of the disclosure of the comments from Mike Mularkey. We talked about that last week as it related to the new edition of Horton and Steve Wilkes on the Brian Flores lawsuit. I just found out about it.
Yeah.
So the clock starts running once it comes to light because they had hidden it from me. There's no way I could have known that I was getting screwed here. I had no reason to think they were doing this. Now, from the NFL's perspective, you're going to have hell to pay unless, and let me address the point you made first before I get too far past that. Lisa Banks, who represents Jason Friedman, referred to some restriction on the ability of Friedman to speak publicly. So he may have signed an NDA for just whatever basic severance was available. And a lot of companies do that to get your 1 week of pay for every year of service. And that's a substantial amount of money for Jason Friedman. If he got 1 week for 24 years with the Washington Commanders organization, that's a lot of cash. You sign an NDA. He was able to testify to Congress. There's usually an exception in those NDAs that will allow testimony to be given. Maybe he had to tell them, I need a subpoena in order to be able to say anything, and maybe he got one. We don't know those details. But the subpoena would overcome whatever the protection of the NDA is. It's keeping him from telling his story publicly, but he told it privately, and it feels like he told it with a great deal of relish, that he was waiting to tell that story.
Oh, yeah.
Now, on top of that, the NFL. You would think the NFL would investigate this aggressively, and after having no comment to the Washington Post earlier today, Brian McCarthy, the NFL spokesman, said this: we continue to cooperate with the Oversight Committee and have provided more than 210,000 pages of documents. The NFL has engaged former SEC Chair Mary Jo White to review the serious matters raised by the committee. Now, that's new that White is also reviewing the financial side of it. We thought White was hired to address the new allegations that were made in February when the Oversight Committee had a roundtable session. It wasn't a hearing per se. The witnesses weren't under oath, but there was a former employee named Tiffany Johnston who made allegations about Daniel Snyder that weren't part of the prior investigation because she refused to cooperate with the prior investigation. Mary Jo White was retained for that. So it sounds like Mary Jo White's work is now morphing into getting to the bottom of these financial improprieties. But the problem with this is that, and how do I put this? I guess I should just put it. The NFL is not going to want to come off as incompetent or asleep at the switch or deliberately negligent or in cahoots in any way with any of these financial improprieties. And the argument, if I were the owner of another team or an executive with another team, I would want to know how in the hell the NFL didn't know this was happening. What protections do you have in place? Or, frankly, do you not have in place? Because maybe we'll do the same thing. But there may be some people right now very nervous at 345 Park Avenue, including Jeff Pash, the pen pal of former Washington President Bruce Allen. Remember those emails about how cozy they were? I'll tell you what, there could be heads rolling, not just at the team headquarters, but at league headquarters when they get to the bottom of this one, Charean.
And, Mike, what do you put the odds that Daniel Snyder loses ownership of his team? Because it's been obvious that the NFL doesn't want that, because the other 31 owners don't want that, because they probably have some similar things somewhere in the closet buried deep in there, and they don't want any of that to come out. But what odds do you put on Daniel Snyder now losing his team, seeing that he kept money from the other owners, from the NFL, based on these allegations?
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.